Okay, and welcome to part two of Biology 1a Control and Health. Now, we left off with looking at the hormones involved in the menstrual cycle. Now, these hormones we can actually use on an artificial basis in what we call controlling fertility. Now, the oral contraceptive, or the pill, is a method of birth control that is used to greatly reduce the chances of mature eggs being produced. Now, the pill itself contains estrogen, and as we know, these hormones, or this hormone, inhibits or stops and prevents the production of FSH, which in turn stops eggs maturing in ovaries. Now, this, as can be seen there, it can control fertility. It's not, however, 100% effective. And it also doesn't protect from HIV and other STIs, sexually transmitted diseases and infections. There's also a chance of thrombosis, which is blood clots. But on the other hand, there is evidence of a decreased risk of developing cancer of the uterus or ovaries when using the pill. Often in science papers you may be asked to give your opinion, given a bit of information, but you should really back it up with scientific information. Fertility treatment as well can involve the use of hormones. Now, the advantages of this are obviously the pros, which increase a woman's chance of becoming pregnant, although the treatment itself may not always work. The downside is also because the treatment boosts the production of mature eggs, multiple conceptions can sometimes occur. Now, this will result in twins or triplets being expected. There are also sometimes increased risk of complications in pregnancy and childbirth, which may lead to premature or underweight babies. Now, the last thing we need to think of with hormones is this thing called IVF. If we quickly go back to bite size, then we can see that IVF itself is, if a couple are having difficulty conceiving a child, IVF can be used. Now, this is where the egg itself is fertilized outside of the woman's body and then put back into her uterus. Now, FSH, the hormone that we talked about earlier, can be used to encourage the production of several mature eggs at once. Now, this is used as part of IVF to increase the number of eggs available for fertilization. It's a bit of an ethical issue, however, IVF, because some people are worried that couples may only want fertilized eggs which have desirable qualities. For example, they may want a girl if they have lots of boys in the family, or they may wish to avoid producing a baby with inherited defects. Okay, so that's basically the end of hormones and the nervous system. Okay, both two varying ways of controlling what happens in the bodies. You can pause on this slide, and have a look at the differences and some similarities between the nervous and hormonal system. I'm going to move quickly on now, though, to the second part, the health aspect. Now, we're going to think about a little bit about what we can do to keep our bodies healthy. Now, a healthy diet is one of the first steps. A healthy diet is one that contains the right balance of the different foods you need and the right amount of energy. Now, in this particular topic, we think about what sort of foods are good for us, what sort of foods are bad for us. We also need to think about this thing called metabolic rate. Now, a bit of a science statement for you. Metabolic rate is the rate you release energy from stores in your body. Now, the food you eat adds to this store. Now, changes in metabolic rate affect the amount of energy you use from the food you eat. Now, an individual's metabolic rate can also be affected by a number of things. It can be affected by your genes, so how your parents may be, their metabolic rate could have been passed down to you, your hormones, and also how much and how often you exercise. Now, food, big issue. I like my food, especially the meals in the PCS restaurant. We need to know about what happens when you have too much food and not enough food. Some of the problems with too much food is that it can cause you to become very fat. Now, very fat people are often described as obese, and overweight people can suffer from a number of health problems, not limited to diabetes, arthritis, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Bad times. And also, if you don't have enough food, you can suffer from deficiency diseases such as rickets or kwashiorkor. And they can lead to a number of health problems such as irregular periods in women, a reduced resistance to infection, and, as I mentioned previously, deficiency diseases. Now, famine there, obviously deficiency diseases can lead to a number of these issues on the pictures. Now we're going to think about this thing called cholesterol. You might have seen it a little bit on TV. It's often advertised with butters and margarines and spread. We need to know that cholesterol is a substance found in the blood. It is made by the liver and it's needed for healthy cell membranes. However, too much increases the risk of heart disease. Now, cholesterol in itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. In the right proportion, it is good. When we combine cholesterol and protein together, we call it a lipoprotein. Now, it's a really important fact, so I'm going to try and drill into now. Low-density lipoproteins carry cholesterol from the liver to the cells. High-density lipoproteins carry excess cholesterol back to the liver. Okay? Low-density lipoproteins, bad times. High-density lipoproteins, good times. Okay? Low-density lipoproteins are bad because they carry cholesterol from the liver to the cells. And high levels of this sort of cholesterol in the blood can increase the risk of disease to the heart and blood vessels. High-density lipoproteins, however, they carry excess cholesterol back to the liver where it can be removed. So obviously they're pretty good for us. Okay? Low density, bad. High density, good. So having more high density lipoproteins to low density lipoproteins is very good for us. Now we can find these things in monounsaturated and polyunsaturated oils, help to reduce cholesterol levels in the blood and also increase the proportion of HDLs compared with LDLs. LDLs bad, HDLs, that's right, they're good. Now, we also need to lastly think about salt. Too much salt in the diet, although I like to have nice seasoning on my food. Too much salt in the diet can lead to an increased blood pressure for about 30% of the population. Processed foods, unfortunately, often contain a high proportion of fat and salt. Okay, so that's pretty much it, all right, for that particular module, B1a, Control and Health. If you want to find some extra information on it, what I would advise is that you go to BBC Bitesize, you go to AQA, under Core Science, you go to Human Biology, under Biology, and then you can look at the revision, activity and test for diet and exercise, hormones, and the nervous system. If you want to look at some exam questions, you can go onto Sam Learning. Just quickly load that up now. Because Sam Learning is obviously a website where there are specific written questions, and there are also some drag and drop exercises in which you can put in keywords. Now the center idea is BS22PS. Your username will be your date of birth, so for example 201081, followed by your initials, RP, and then your password, unless you change it, will be exactly the same thing. So I'm just going to quickly log in, and I'm going to show you where you can find the questions for this particular topic. Okay, take a few moments. So think about, we'll go quickly back to our exercise. Salt, lipoproteins, high density good, low density bad. Okay, quickly get back to Sam Learning. If we look on GCSE, science, and then we look particularly for the subjects we've been talking about in B1a, Control and Health, you want to be looking at core science, biology, health. Health eating will have about the lipoproteins, which one's bad, which one's good. And living body's response to change will have nervous system and reflex actions, controlling conditions, and all about the menstrual cycle and fertility control. So all about the hormones we talked about. So 2 key places that you want to be looking at. You want to be looking at BBC Bitesize and Sam Learning. Okay, so that's about really all it leaves for me to say is happy learning, and I think we'll just about say yes, it is the end. Bye bye.